I know it has been a while since I released a video. We were actually migrating our course notes away from the Nextra hosted open source site to our main platform and putting it behind a registration flow. We did this for three reasons: to capture more user registrations, to launch premium content and make it easier to set up the paywall, to make our platform truly a single place for everything front end. So, frontendhire.com/courses is where you'll find the courses now. Also, I did launch a new course and the video should be ready by next month. It's called Stack Pack. Making these videos is still new to me and I'm trying my best to improve this process. Either way, let us get into the final video of our Todo App course. This video is about component composition and the upcoming summary. I only hate one thing about the new React docs: not having a dedicated section for composition versus inheritance. It is labeled as part of main concepts in the old docs, but in the new docs, it is kind of spread around multiple sections. The main takeaway from this old section is simple: you can pass anything as a prop in React. That includes React components themselves. We have already used component composition to refactor the label, input, and button into a single component. But let us look at a stronger way of composing components. We currently have a list of tasks we're rendering in the app component. Let's try to extract this into its separate component called task list. I'm going to just do it here for now. Let's call it task list. Let me also disable my copilot. And I'm going to just return the same stuff. Now, since task list needs tasks, let's also pass them. I'm going to just create a type called task list props. It's going to be a list of tasks, and we know that it's an array of tasks. And we have access to our task now. And let's also use the task list component. And it requires us to pass the tasks. And we're good to go. Everything works fine. All right. Let's put it in a different file. I'm going to call it task list, same as the component name. And also export it as default. And also import the type. And also import it over here. Cool. Still everything works. Let us also try to extract this individual list item into its own function, into its own component called task list item. I'm going to just copy this. And we need to also define the type over here. I'm going to call it last task list item props. And it's going to take a title with which is a string. Task list item props and title. We're not using task here. We don't need to do the task.id over here. We'll do it and in the parent component. We don't have to do the key stuff here. And let us try to use it. Right. And I need to pass the title, which is task.title. And we also need to pass the key, which is task.id. Good. Still nothing special. We'll get there. At least from a readability perspective, it's easier to read. I know that it's a task list item component and it's a task list component, but there is a lot of props that are being thrown around. Let us fix that using the composition model. Before that, let me also separate this into its own component. You don't have to do it. It just makes it easier to find these components later on. And again, the same stuff. I'm gonna export default and import it over here. All right. Let us start with the task list item right away. Instead of taking a title prop, React gives us something called a child prop. It's called as children, not child, children prop. And you automatically get it for every component. And the way we use it, I'll just show you. So we don't need to anymore define this type because we are going to pass children, and we get a good type safety by using something called React props with children. And I'm going to just use children instead of title over here. Cool. And you can see that we lost some information over here, but we'll repair that in a while. So we no longer pass title as a prop, but rather we pass children. So that means we open a opening tag and a closing tag and pass children between these two tags. So here we pass our task.title. Now everything should work as expected. There's no unnecessary props that are being passed now. And we'll do the same with task list too. Now, instead of using the task list item here, we could technically pass this from the parent of task list itself as a child. And how can we do that? Again, instead of passing tasks over here, we're going to just pass children. Again, we don't need these types over here. It's going to be react.props with children. And yep, we don't need this. We will directly use the children here, and I'm going to just copy this stuff to the parent, right? Like literally 3 lines of code over here. But here we no longer pass tasks. We rather pass the children. And I'm going to import the task list item over here. Everything works as expected. Now this feels a lot more natural if you ask me. We know it's a task list, and maybe this encompasses all of our styling or some additional logic. Similarly with task list item, it has maybe the layout or structure for the item and maybe holds some other information too. Technically speaking, we are still passing the same props, but in a different way. React calls these special props as children. That's what we extracted out of those props, right? Let's say now we want to show the number of tasks in the task list component. We can easily do that by adding a new component called task list header and using it inside of a task list component, right? Let's do that. Let's create a component called task list header.tsx, and it's going to be a simple function with the same name, and it's going to be a h2 header, maybe total tasks, and it represents a count, and this count would be passed as a prop. So let's also define the same task list header props. This is just a convention I use all the time when defining my types for the props. Feel free to use whatever convention works for you. And same over here. It's going to be count. All right, our task list header component is ready. Now let us use it inside the task list component as passing it as a child, right? So I'm going to use my task list header here, and maybe the count is task.length. Though this works, it's quite unnatural because the heading is inside an unordered list. It's not natural for this to have something like this, right? Semantic is lost. But now we can create an additional slot just like children and pass this entire component as a prop. I'll show you how to do that. Back in a task list component, we might need to define our props again. So I'm going to call it type task list props. And what are we additionally going to take is called header. And I'm going to keep it option. We might or might not require it to pass. Like the user has the developer has the option. And maybe this task list is reusable across multiple places in our application. And this is how I pass my task list props now. And now since we also have header, I'm going to use it here. Maybe I'll just use a fragment over here. And use my header. If it is there, it's going to show up. Otherwise, it's not going to show up. Right. Now, this is a lot more natural. And if we inspect, you could see that the h2, is it still inside? Maybe I have to refresh my, oh, my bad. I haven't passed it as a prop. So yeah, this is the main concept which I wanted to discuss, which is you can pass a React component as a prop. This is super powerful and helps a lot with performance and the way you compose these components. Right now you see h2 is outside of our unordered list, and maybe let's add something. Yep, this works now. Now whenever a task list re-renders, right, the task, the actual list will not be impacted. It won't be re-rendered. And I'm going to show you that with a simple example by putting up a small timer in our task list component. I'm going to just simply put up a log first. Task list rendered. And if you look at our console, it should show up 2 times. In strict mode, it runs twice. That's the reason you see both of these. Now I'm going to set up a timer. I'm going to use state to store these seconds. Set seconds. And I'm going to import react.useState. It's going to start from 0. And since we're setting up a timer, we need to talk to an external API which browser provides. The timer, the interval, right? Set interval. Const interval is equal to set interval. The reason I'm saving the instance is because I want to clear it. Otherwise, it's a memory leak. And I want to calculate for 1000 milliseconds, which is 1 second. And set seconds is equal to previous and previous. Some people call it previous, some people call it current. I stick to the previous notation. Again, depends on what your team is comfortable with. And I'm going to clear the interval which I saved. Cool. Now let me just render my task list over here, the seconds over here. Right. You see that my task list component re-renders. But what about my task list item? Because the task list component re-renders, should the task list item also re-render? Though it might feel like it would re-render, it won't. That is the power of passing something as a prop. What am I going to task list item rendered? And you can look, we don't see, there's only one, there's only 2 logs, which is the strict mode and the regular log. But apart from that, everything else is from the task list item, task list component. The task list item does not render more than twice. That's because of strict mode. So this is what I wanted to discuss, component composition. It takes a couple of projects to get familiar with this, I would say. And once you really understand the performance benefits and how well you could write your components, right? This helps really with how you can write your component API. Let's assume you're designing a button, right? You're developing a button and you have a slot for icon. Right? That's where this is actually most widely used. All right, we are at the end of our course. Though I want to build the full-fledged application showing you edit, delete, maybe server, database. There are just too many tutorials that teach you how to build this, right? Our goal was to teach you how to build a React application while learning some of the best practices. So this is more of a mini course. So you got to use test-driven development, you got to use TypeScript, you got to learn about composition, component composition, you got to learn about performance. And I would say you could use this as a starting point and build the entire application. Go ahead, write the logic for edit, delete, server, use test-driven development there too. There are actual apps that make millions in revenue for a simple to-do application too. For example, there is Todoist, there is TickTick. And if you want a project guide on how to build a resume-worthy project, you can look at this project guide. It's a very high-level guide on how to build a great to-do application, I would say. For example, this is from Todoist app. They use uh, token detection, right? They're using regex, I believe, but even a simple text parsing would help you achieve something like this. Also, if you did like this course, I would say subscribe and maybe even like the video. There are more free courses and free single one-off videos that I plan on doing. Either way, hope you enjoyed this video and the course. Thank you for watching. See you again.